Hello and welcome to another video. So we have some Control Blood, at least that's the idea of the deck anyway. It does a pretty good job. I mean, Reach the Archdemon is a great new card for clearing out things. You would think it's like Demonic Storm, but it's really nothing like Demonic Storm. I mean, they both do 3 damage, but this one is a hell of a lot better. Especially when you consider regaining 3 play points, you basically can get this for 3 cost, which is a great way to combo it off, or just play it straight out. Works pretty nicely too. We're also including a Happy Pig for that extra little bit of healing. We can either get 1 or 3. Other than that, I think I'm running a single Fall from Grace. I found 1 as a tech choice in this deck in particular. Works nicely, especially if you come up against another control-oriented deck, or just Dragon in general. Fall from Grace hitting those big threats can actually do some real damage to them. Other than that, I'm running 2 Terror Demons. Some people like to run 1. I found 2 to be basically where I want this deck. Having that little bit of healing is good. Other than that, Blood Hungry Matriarch as a 2 of. Found a nice way for that to be used. Pretty good clear. This is based very similarly on Aya Senpai's deck from Shadowverse. It's, you know, his deck's obviously got a fair bit of variation, but they serve this similar purpose: healing, damage, while at the same time controlling everything you want. So, your Vengeance activator, of course, Blood Moon. Belf, I tend to avoid playing straight out unless I am in the later stages of the game, just because I don't want to really be bursted down too early. So I usually try and combo Blood Moon and Belf together most of the time. Other than that, I think your best Vengeance activators are going to be Blood Drinker's Brand, which you can use on your own to get a bit of healing, or you can use on your opponent's cards in the early game, and Recovering 2 basically makes it a drain, which is really good. Then we've also got of course, the Vengeance on the Reach of the Archdemon, which we talked about. And that's pretty much it for Vengeance activating cards. So we've got, what, 3? Yeah, 3 Vengeance activated cards, which you wouldn't think would be quite enough to really take advantage of Blood Moon and, you know, if you wanted to use Belf effects, but I think it's perfect kind of spot to be in, especially the amount of heal we've got. We've got 2 Wardrobe Raiders, 2 Scarlets, sorry, 3 Scarlets, so we've got, between those alone, that's a nice, 10 heal, which is really good. Happy Pig at minimum is 1, so you can get a little bit of healing off on this deck really quite nicely. So we'll get right into some games and check it out. The first matchup for this deck is probably one of its easier matches, and that is against Rune. I haven't come across a Rune deck so far that I couldn't beat with this deck. It's been quite effective. I think it's because of the clear potential it's got. It's the same reason this does do okay against Portal. Of course, the only problem with Portal is they do some really nice value trading, so if you're not careful and you've got a half-decent Portal opponent, they could put you on the ropes, but overall you can usually dominate them, especially in this early stages of the meta where Portal isn't that commonly played well, I would say. Commonly played well. Would be a nice way to put it. So, of course, they play Lu. Looks like we're going to see some shenanigans coming from Rune lately. I believe this one's a Daria Rune, but I did fight a couple of Burns and they were just really easy pickings. We've got pretty much everything we need removal-wise. Blood Moon is a nice setup prior. I really actually enjoy a lot of these cards in this deck, and it plays really quite smoothly. The only difficult matchup is Shadow I've found so far, at least in every game I've played. Of course, there are different variations of Control Blood, so they have different variation against each one, but Dragon was a very iffy match as well. It's very, you need to high roll them before they high roll you sort of deck at that point. But Shadow is just huge risk. You got to take risk after risk if you want to beat Shadow. So this one was easy. Heal up, put something on board. Wardrobe Raid is good for that. Going to turn 5, we have an option to play Scarlet. We can drop the Blood. We can drop another Wardrobe. So many good options. Blood Moon with Happy Pig was just better. No concern. Not worried about keeping my Evolves in this matchup just because knowing Rune. You're not too concerned with holding onto them. You really just want to be able to push as fast as you can, just so you don't give them any ground. But I am thinking of building a rune similar to this one. I think a Daria rune variation using Mysteria could be quite interesting. Blade Mage. They actually had a pretty decent hand. If they weren't coming up against this deck in particular, they might have done alright. I mean, it's just unfortunate that going into turn 6, Reach is just going to absolutely dominate this. While also giving me a ability to play something else if I draw into a 3 or less drop. which unfortunately I don't, but still playing it, worthwhile. Daria's not the best deck for reforming off a loss of so many good cards. Losing 2 Storm and losing your Ogla is pretty important. I do have my Blood Hungry. No point holding it against Rune. Especially Daria Rune, where most of their stat lines are higher than 2. Plus, we are getting close to turn 8, turn 9, which is where we just want to hold off until we can Baha if we're worried about dealing with them. Opponent finally plays Daria. And of course, Mysterious Knowledge.
How interesting.
And they happen to get Missile. Great. Probably the best card they honestly could have got off that. If they had got the other one, they would have had a little bit more trouble dealing with that. I suppose, lucky for me, we do get an easy way to deal with this. Of course, I could have just thrown the Esmeralda, left something up, but I thought getting a full board clear against Dario always feels good. And we can always use anything else in the next turn, like the Emeralda. We won't get the Storm, of course, because we won't be in Vengeance, but it's a risk I was willing to take. Alright, so they're aiming for the President. And they concede, so they must have run out of steam there, not having anything to actually go forward, whereas we had plenty. Next up, I wanted to show off one of the harder matches, which is a Dragon. You're gonna have a hard time beating Dragon down. So we do have Blood Drinker's Brand, which is quite solid. Not really worthwhile keeping against Dragon though. Most of the early drops are all 2 health, no point wasting that on that. And we really needed to push for something like Hungering and Happy Pig, which we did end up getting quite well. Wretch of the Archdemon, so Reach. I keep thinking Wretch. But anyway, pretty good card. I still like it in every matchup so far that I've used it. You have got to be a bit careful not to kill your own stuff with it unless you want to. Otherwise, it's just solid. So no turn 2, no turn 3, which not great. Would have preferred to have had something to actually play. Should have considered like this Happy Pig, maybe, but I didn't have any other play. Putting stuff on board against Dragon's important. Making sure that you can deal with their early game so they can't pull off anything crazy, especially now that they have to use Evolve to ramp up with that other card, so you can counter that pretty well. And of course, perfect way to get rid of that Scyther. Saber's just great for that. But we don't really have anything going forward, which is unfortunate. I mean, we get to deal with the Sybil, which is awesome. We get to deal a little bit of damage, which is also good. But we don't get to do much from here. Like, we have the Bahamut, we've got the Terror Demon. We haven't used the Evolves yet, so we haven't boosted anything. Another Sybil gets dropped. Basically, forcing my hand to remove it. Lucky, a Terror Demon actually going to be okay to remove this. I didn't really have another use for it yet. And I couldn't really see the point on wasting Scarlet when I'm probably going to need that to deal with the Bahamut. Especially going into turn 10 next turn. Which, as I predicted, was the perfect way to do it. The other option is I can just drop Emeralda, which I have definitely considered probably would have been the better play here instead of dropping anything else. So playing that out, getting rid of the Bahamut, leaving up the 4-5, keeping the Scarlet, keeping my Evolve point. Worked out really nicely. Of course, Eyes. Interesting card. It's definitely not as good as Genesis, but it makes up for that by having its ability change its cost. Luckily we can remove it. This match is definitely difficult, no matter what you're playing now. I mean, Belfier was huge risk, honestly. I probably shouldn't have played it. Playing the Belf puts me at 10, which is easy for Dragon to actually do. So it wouldn't have surprised me if they just outright won that turn. Lucky for me, no real winning here. Their Rehab isn't going to be able to do much. Especially when you consider what I've got in hand. Plenty of removal. Even better, this Emeralda can just literally kill it, go face, set up a blockade so they can't deal damage. And now we just gotta hope we can survive. So, no Baha, good to see. No other big threats, just small Dragon Scythe trying to pick off my board. Ping another 4 to face, set up. Be very close to lethal at this point. We do get to see another Jahaka. Going for 6 this time. Puts us in a bad spot going into next turn. Also didn't count for this perfectly, otherwise I would have tried to keep that 4 drop up. But we do get to clear out completely, so that worked in our favour just slightly.
Fighting is so sorrowful.
So we get to stay at 10. So we're going to be in Vengeance regardless. Dropping the Baha gets rid of the Scissor Fill. As long as we don't see them clear this, which they have used, I believe, all their Scythers already. It's going to be a little tricky to deal with the Baha after Baha play. And even better, we can just get rid of that. We've got some nice setup cards, deal with the next play, bait out a Baha from them, and hopefully go for lethal if they can't actually defend themselves here. And Zeus. So Zeus makes things a little more difficult. They do decide to go face, which is great, because I mean, if they had killed the Baha, I don't know what I would have done. And this Fenver, great card to draw out. Gives the exact way to go for lethal here. And our final game for this video, we have a Shadow. They had a pretty fancy little emblem too, so I like that one.
Let me take you to the underworld.
Pretty average draw, honestly. Not a big fan against Shadow drawing all of those. The Hungering is actually really good, just for dealing with skeletons and other things. Other than that, our hands are a little heavy. I would have preferred some of my lower drops. Happy Pig would have been nearly ideal, honestly. Belinus becoming an absolute pain. Choose to deal with it with the Hungering just because I don't have any other card. I can't afford to take a 2 damage to face and then not be able to deal with it in the next turn either. Not so lucky they do get Scullering. But super lucky we get our second Hungering Horde, which allows us to deal with those skeletons quite effectively. Limiting our damage against Shadow is pretty important. Like I said, this is probably one of the worst matchups for this deck that I've found so far. I've barely beaten Shadow in most of my games, but I have managed to actually beat them. Shadow just has so much good late game value that it's quite hard to outvalue that. You've got to pretty much try and keep the board constantly clear, while at the same time dealing as much damage as you can. And luckily our Saber will survive this.
One bite's all I need.
Don't want to come across and lose your entire board to most of the Shadow's followers. Blood Hungry will be great because they do run a lot of low cost things, so Blood Hungry will clear everything out. We've got the Furner, which is great for dealing with anything with 2 health, along with just pinging something off due to rush. So a lot of this is very orientated towards clearing their board. So you'd think you'd have a great matchup against Shadow, but unfortunately they can just stack the board a lot more than you can clear a lot of the time. Especially with something like this, Skeleton Prince, bane of my existence. It's not the worst card, but it's definitely not the easiest either. Because to have the card I got on board's effect off, you actually need to attack with it. And with 1 health, there's literally no way for you to attack something effectively. I do believe you actually have to hit a follower to have this trigger, if I'm right, but I can't remember, so... Otherwise, I should have just hit face, and follower attacks, and yeah, it destroys an enemy follower. So you need to destroy something to have it trigger. So hitting face really wasn't going to be good enough anyway. To get it to actually trigger. We have got the Wardrobe Raider, we've still got an Evolve Point, we have the Emeralda, which is going to be pretty good value. The problem is these Thanes are going to be really difficult to deal with, like getting rid of these little bodies, while at the same time not taking too much damage. Not the easiest thing to do, but isn't going to be impossible. Playing Belf may have been a huge mistake though. I think that was probably too big a risk, honestly. Like, I'm not going to die to Hector, but at the same time, I'm putting myself dangerously close to being dead. I mean, an Isha next turn will literally kill me. Pretty much guaranteed at this point. I should have tried to find another way around this board instead. So that picks up most of the clear here. Also gaining the 3 points back to the Vengeance. Using Blood Drinker's Brand to remove one of these little followers just so they can't push through the snake easily. The snake will also put me out of range of pretty much everything. I mean, Aisha is not going to be able to do it because it's not going to get quite enough damage, is it? Oh no, it would have, wouldn't it? Yeah, because the stats would have been just high enough to actually, I think, clear that and go face. So that would have been lethal if they had it. Luckily, didn't get to see that. And they couldn't get rid of anything on my board, which leaves this Emeralda to clean up that 4-5 and go for a perfect amount of faith damage for lethal. More than enough damage. Triple Peacock though is great. Look at it, it's amazing looking. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. You will find the deck list to this deck in the description below. Make sure to check out everything else that's in the description, whether it's my Twitter, whether it's Discord, whether it's the Shadow Nexus's Discord. You can find all of those down there. So I hope you guys will stick around for more content going into 2018, and I will catch you guys next time. See ya.